There we go. Now we are right here. Welcome to the stream. It is time to read some nice, fun stuff. Let me just... Yes, I should be... Oh, why is the... Huh? Why is the chat all the way down here? Let me change that. Chat box. You naughty chat box. You cannot be there, you silly. There we go, that should be better. Yeah, that's me. Here I am. Right where I need to be, indeed. Yum 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 yum. It wants to be right on me, shaking my head. Okay, now we are ready. Oh yeah, let me upload this photo real quick so we can get just a little visual. I could... Oh, actually, let me just... where is it? Test... Was it this one? No. Oh, it's a slideshow. Okay. I'm just gonna add the slideshow here and see if that looks fine. Just so we, you know, get a little visual. Okay, so if I add this here, and I just put it here like so, and I hide this logo, and then I add this picture. Oh, I need to cut it a little better actually. That's fine though, it won't take too long. I'm so excited to read this book to all of you. Finally, some nice horror for us to start with. Oops, wrong one. There we go. Too bad I can't really do a hand cam or anything like that. But oh well. Edgar Allan Poe. Where is Regalia? There you are. And then we gotta add this as a source. It's an image. And I'll just put the image of the book on the corner there so you can, you know, which one we are reading today. Oh, that's big, damn. Despite everything, my camera has some nice resolution. But yeah, I'll just add a photo of the book here and I'll add the color logo in there and that should be good. There we go. Now we are ready. Okay, let's begin, shall we? I've turned on my light. Oh. I've turned on my light and I'm ready to go. Okay. Alright. Let's add some rain noises as we read. And let's all... Oh, that's a little too loud for you. And let's all relax as we enjoy some nice reading, shall we? I'm gonna start reading the book in order, I suppose. How this book is structured is that it has the stories first, and then it has the poems. So, I'm gonna read a story. I don't know how many stories I'll get through, maybe depending on how long they are, like 2 or 3. And then I will... What's it called? Oh, this is an introduction, okay. After that, to end the stream, I am going to read a poem for you all. I mean, my objective is to make you relax. If you get a different feeling, well, that's really not my fault, is it? But yeah, let's try to relax and have fun. Here, can you hear the turn of the pages? Okay. It's not my fault. I'm just a nice and kind streamer that loves to read things to nice girls. It's not my fault if they like my voice way too much. Although I do like teasing girls, but that's besides the point. In any case, should I read the entire introduction or just get to the stories? Let's see how long the introduction is. Maybe it'd be nice to learn about Edgar Allan Poe in more detail with his biography. Let's see how long it is. Okay, so just to the stories. Yeah, that's probably a better idea because it's pretty long. Let's see here. In that case, let's start with the very first story in this book called The Unparalleled Adventure of One Hand's Fall. Okay, I'm going to add that to the text, so you know which one we're reading. I'm reading. Let's see here. The Unparalleled. This one might not be too horror, but who knows? Of One Hand's Fall. Oh, fall with double A. Okay. The Unparalleled Adventure of One Hand's Fall. Okay. That's the first story we'll be reading. So sit down, relax, get cozy, and let's begin. There we go, you should be able to... Oh wait. There. Should be able to listen to the thing, to see the thing now, the text. So yeah. Let's see here. The Unparalleled Adventure of One Hand's Fall by Edgar Allan Poe. With a heart of furious fancies, whereof I am commander, with a burning spear and a horse of air, to the wilderness I wander. Tom o' Bedlam's song, that is a quote that starts right before the book, or right before the story. And the story proper goes like this. By late accounts from Rotterdam, that city seems to be in a high state of philosophical excitement. Indeed, phenomena have there occurred of a nature so completely unexpected, so entirely novel, so utterly at variance with preconceived opinions, as to leave no doubt on my mind that long ere this all Europe is in uproar, all physics in a ferment, all reason and astronomy together by the ears. It appears that on the day of, I am not positive about the date, a vast crowd of people, for purposes not specifically mentioned, were assembled in the great square of the exchange in the well-conditioned city of Rotterdam. The day was warm, unusually so for the season. There was hardly a breath of air stirring, and the multitude of momentary duration that fell from a large white masses of cloud which wait, which checkered in a fitful manner the blue vault of the firmament. Nevertheless, about noon, a slight but remarkable agitation became apparent in the assembly. The clattering of 10,000 tongues succeeded, and in an instant afterward, 10,000 faces were upturned towards the heavens. 10,000 pipes descended simultaneously from the corners of 10,000 mouths. Oh, you wanna click? Okay. Oh, I put the book before. Give me a second. 10,000 pipes descended simultaneously from the corners of 10,000 mouths, and a shout which could be compared to nothing but the roaring of Niagara resounded long, loudly, and furiously through all the environs of Rotterdam. Thank you for redeeming that, E.T. Such a good girl. There you have a click. Well, I am going to ignore you until I am, until I get to a point in which I can stop. Then I'll let you know. Okay. I just had to write something, or have to write something real fast. But yeah. Okay, I'll continue. I'm continuing now. The origin of this hubbub soon became sufficiently evident. From behind the huge bulk of one of those sharply defined masses of cloud already mentioned, was seen slowly to emerge into an open area of blue space a queer, heterogeneous, but apparently solid substance, so oddly shaped, so whimsically put together by the host of sturdy burghers who stood open-mouthed below. I'm not mean, I'm just silly. What could it be? In the name of all the brows and devils in Rotterdam, what could it possibly portend? No one knew. No one could imagine. No one. Not even the burgomaster Minor Superbus von Underdog had the slightest clue by which to unravel the mystery. So as nothing more reasonable could be done, every one to a man replaced his pipe carefully in the corner of his mouth, and cocking off his right eye towards the phenomenon, puffed, paused, waddled around, and grunted significantly. Then waddled back, grunted, paused, and finally puffed again. In the meantime, however, lower and still lower towards the goodly city came the object of so much curiosity and the cause of so much smoke. In a very few minutes, it arrived near enough to be accurately discerned. It appeared to be, yes, it was undoubtedly a species of balloon. But surely no such balloon had ever been seen in Rotterdam before. For who, let me ask, ever heard of a balloon manufactured entirely of dirty newspaper? Now that's silly. A balloon of newspaper. I wonder who is responsible for this. No man in Holland certainly, yet here, under the very nose of the people, or rather at some distance above their noses, was the identical thing in question, and composed, I have it on the best authority, of the precise material which no one had ever before known to be used for a similar purpose. It was an egregious insult to the good sense of the burghers of Rotterdam. As to the shape of the phenomenon, it was even still more reprehensible, being little or nothing better than a huge fool's cap turned upside down, and this similitude was regarded as by no means lessened when, upon nearer inspection, there was perceived a large tassel depending from its apex, and, around the upper rim of base of the cone, a circle of little instruments resembling ship bells, which kept up a continual tinkling to the tune of Betty Martin. But still worse, suspended by blue ribbons to the end of this fantastic machine, there hung, by way of car, an enormous drab beaver hat, with a brim superlatively broad and a hemispherical crown with a black band in a silver brim superlatively... Oh no, wait, sorry. And a silver buckle. I got a little mixed up there, my apologies. And so... It is, however, somewhat remarkable that many citizens of Rotterdam swore to having seen the same hat repeatedly before, and indeed, the whole assembly seemed to regard it with eyes of familiarity, while the Vrouw Gretel Fall, upon sight of it, uttered an exclamation of joyful surprise, and declared it to be the identical hat of her good man himself. Now this was a circumstance the more to be observed, as Val, with 3 companions, had actually disappeared from Rotterdam about 5 years before, in a very sudden and unaccountable manner, and up to the date of this narrative, all attempts had failed to obtain any intelligence concerning them whatsoever. To be sure, some bones which were thought to be human, mixed up with a quantity of odd-looking rubbish, had been lately discovered in a retired situation to the east of Rotterdam, and some people went so far as to imagine that in this spot a foul murder had been committed, and that the sufferers were in all probability Hans Fall and his associates, but to return. Interesting. So I think... Okay. The balloon, for such no doubt it was, had now descended to within 100 feet of the earth, allowing the crowd below a sufficiently distinct view of the person of its occupant. This was in truth a very droll little somebody. He could not have been more than 2 feet in height, but this altitude, little as it was, would have been sufficient to destroy his equilibrium and tilt him over the edge of his tiny car. But for the intervention of a circular rim reaching as high as the breast and rigged onto the cord of the balloon, the body of the little man was more than proportionately broad, giving to his entire figure a rotundly highly absurd. His feet, of course, could not be seen at all, although a horny substance of suspicious nature was occasionally protruded through a rent in the bottom of the car, or to speak more properly, in the top of the hat. His hands were enormously large. His hair was extremely grey, and collected in a queue behind. His nose was prodigiously long, crooked and inflammatory. His eyes, fully, brilliant and acute. His chin and cheeks, although wrinkled with age, were broad, puffy and double, but of ears of any kind or character there was not a semblance to be discovered upon any portion of his head. This odd little gentleman was dressed in a loose surtout of sky blue satin, with tight breeches to match, fastened with silver buckles at the knees. His vest was of some bright yellow material. A white taffy cap was set jauntily on one side of his head, and, to complete his equipment, a blood-red silk handkerchief enveloped his throat, and fell down in a dainty manner upon his bosom in a fantastic bow knot of supereminent dimensions. Having descended, as I said before, to about 100 feet from the surface of the earth, the little old gentleman was suddenly seized with a fit of trepidation, and appeared disinclined to make any nearer approach to terra firma, throwing out, therefore, a quantity of sand from a canvas bag, which he lifted with great difficulty. He became stationary in an instant. He then proceeded, in a hurried and agitated manner, to extract from a side pocket his surtout a large morocco pocket book. This he poised suspiciously in his hand, then eyed it with an air of extreme surprise, and was evidently astonished at its weight. He at length opened it, and drawing therefrom a huge letter, sealed with red sealing wax and tied carefully with red tape, let it fall precisely at the feet of the burgomaster, Superbus von Underduk. His Excellency stooped to take it up, but the aeronaut, still greatly discomposed, and having apparently no further business to detain him in Rotterdam, began at this moment to make busy preparations for departure. And it being necessary to discharge a portion of ballast to enable him to reascend, the half-dozen bags which he threw out, one after another, without taking the trouble to empty their contents, rumbled, every one of them most unfortunately upon the back of the burgomaster, and rolled him over and over no less than 21 times in the face of every man in Rotterdam. It is not to be supposed, however, that the great underdog suffered this impertinence on the part of the little old man to pass off with impunity. It is said, on the contrary, that during each and every one of his 21 circumvolutions he emitted no less than 21 distinct and furious whiffs from his pipe, to which he held fast the whole time with all his might, and to which he intends holding fast until the day of his death. In the meantime, the balloon arose like a lark, and soaring far away above the city, at length drifted quietly behind a cloud similar to that from which it had so oddly emerged, and was thus lost forever to the wondering eyes of the good citizens of Rotterdam. All attention... All attention was now directed to the letter, the descent of which, as the consequences attending thereupon, had proved so fatally subversive. Ooh, let's see. Oh, nice voice. Okay. Let's see here. Let me settle the nice voice, and now I can start reading in it. So, let's start. Okay. All attention was now directed to the letter, the descent of which, and then consequences attending thereupon, had proved so fatally subversive of both person and personal dignity to His Excellency, the illustrious Burgomaster, Mynheer Superbus von Underduk. That functionary, however, had not failed, during his circumgerogatory movements, to bestow a thought upon the important subject of securing the packet in question, which was seen, upon inspection, to have fallen into the most proper hands, being actually addressed to himself and Professor Robadov in their official capacities of President and Vice President of the Rotterdam College of Astronomy. It was accordingly opened by those dignitaries upon the spot, and found to contain the following extraordinary and indeed very serious communication. There we go, that is the ASMR voice for you. And now let's continue reading it normally. To their excellencies, Von Underdog and Robadob, President and Vice President of the State's College of Astronomers in the city of Rotterdam. Your excellencies may perhaps be able to remember an humble artisan by name Hans Fall, and by occupation a mender of bellows, who, with 3 others, disappeared from Rotterdam about 5 years ago in a manner which must have been considered by all parties at once sudden and extremely unaccountable. If, however, it so pleases your excellencies, I, the writer of this communication, am the identical Hans Fall himself. Ooh, actually, let me see how many pages does this one has. Oh, it's long. I might only be able to read one of these, actually. Interesting. Yep. I'll be only able to read this one, but that's perfectly fine. A long story is always nice nonetheless. Holy fuck, is it long? Oh, okay, yeah, that's like 30 plus pages now. Okay, that's about 30 pages. Let's see how far we can get into ours. It is well known to most of my fellow citizens that for the period of 40 years I continued to occupy the little square brick building at the head of the Allikale Sauerkraut, in which I resided at the time of my disappearance. My ancestors have also resided therein time out of mind. They, as well as myself, steadily following the respectable and indeed lucrative profession of mending bellows. For to speak the truth, until of late years, that the heads of all people have been set agog with politics, no better business than my own could an honest citizens of Rotterdam either desire or deserve. Credit was good, employment was never wanting, and on all hands there was no lack of either money or goodwill. But, as I was saying, we soon began to feel the effects of liberty and long speeches and radicalism and all that sort of thing. People who were formerly the very best customers in the world had now not a moment of time to think of us at all. They had, so they said, as much as they could do to read about the revolutions. The revolutions. Oh, I got a little lost. I'm sorry that I had to close my eyes when. Oh fuck! Sorry for that too. When I yawned, and well, that was tragic. Let me find it again, but I'm gonna drink water in the meantime. There we go. They had, so they said, as much as they could do to read about their revolutions and keep up with the march of intellect and the spirit of the age. If a fire wanted fanning, it could readily be fanned with a newspaper. And as the government grew weaker, I have no doubt that leather and iron acquired durability in proportion, for in a very short time there was not a pair of bellows in all Rotterdam that ever stood in need of a stitch or required the assistance of a hammer. This was a state of things not to be endured. I soon grew as poor as a rat, and having a wife and children to provide for, my burdens at length became intolerable, and I spent hour after hour in reflecting upon the most convenient method of putting an end to my life. Amazing. Wow, okay, buddy. Thus, in the meantime, left me little leisure for contemplation. My house was literally besieged from morning till night, so that I began to rave and foam and fret like a caged tiger against the bars of his enclosure. Wait, don't tell me the stream died. Oh yeah, I am hydrated. Okay, it's not that good. uh, okay. There were three fellows in particular who worried me beyond endurance, keeping watch continually about my door and threatening me with the law. Upon these three I internally vowed the bitterest revenge if ever I should be so happy as to get them with my clutches, and I believe nothing in the world but the pleasure of this anticipation prevented me from putting my plan of suicide into immediate execution by blowing my brains out with a blunderbuss. I thought it best, however, to dissemble my wrath and to treat them with promises and fair words until by some good turn of fate an opportunity of vengeance should be afforded me. Wow, okay, so Mr. Fall is spiteful as fuck. Because these guys won't stop bothering him. How usual. Yep, that's pretty common, I guess. Revenge, such a tragically bitter thing. Okay. One day, having given my creditors the slip and feeling more than usually dejected, I continued for a long time to wander about the most obscure streets without object whatever, until at length I chanced to stumble against the corner of a bookseller's stall. Seeing a chair close at hand for the use of customers, I threw myself doggedly into it, and hardly knowing why, I opened the pages of the first volume which came within my reach. It proved to be a small pamphlet treatise on speculative astronomy, written either by Professor Enck of Berlin or by a Frenchman of somewhat similar name. I had some little tincture of information on matters of this nature, and soon became more and more absorbed in the contents of the book, reading it actually through twice before I awoke to a recollection of what was passing around me. By this time it began to grow dark, and I directed my steps towards home. But the treatise had made it an indelible impression on my mind, and as I sauntered along the dusky streets, I revolved carefully over in my memory the wild and sometimes unintelligible reasoning of the writer. There are some particular passages which affected my imagination in a powerful and extraordinary manner. The longer I meditated upon this, the more fucking bots. Gotta kill them real quick. Ban. There we go. Okay. The longer I meditated upon this, the more intense grew the interest which had been excited within me. The limited nature of my education in general, and more especially my ignorance of subjects connected with natural philosophy, so far from rendering me different to my own ability to comprehend what I had read, or inducing me to mistrust the many vague notions which had arisen in consequence, merely served as a further stimulus to imagination. And I was vain enough, or perhaps reasonable enough, to doubt whether those crude ideas which, arising in ill-regulated minds, have all the appearance, may not often in effect possess all the force, in reality, and others inherent properties, of instinct and or intuition. Whether, to proceed a step farther, profundity itself might not, in matters of a purely speculative nature be detected as a legitimate source of falsity and error. In other words, I believed, and still do believe. This fucking brat. Let me just get the SMR now. I just started. Okay, let's see here. I believe, and still do believe, that truth is frequently of its own essence superficial, and that in many cases the depth lies more in the abysses where we seek her than in the actual situations wherein she may be found. Nature herself seemed to afford me corroboration of these ideas. In the contemplation of the heavenly bodies, it struck me forcibly that I could not distinguish a star with nearly as much precision when I gazed on with earnest, direct, and undeviating attention, as when I suffered my eye only to glance in its vicinity alone. I was not, of course, at that time aware that this apparent paradox was occasioned by the center of the visual area being less susceptible of feeble impressions of light than the exterior portion of the retina. This knowledge and some of another kind came afterwards in the course of an eventful 5 years, during which I have dropped the prejudices of my former humble situation in life and forgotten the velos mender in far different occupations. But at the epochs of which I speak, the analog which a casual observation of a star offered to the conclusion I had already drawn struck me with the force of positive confirmation, and I then finally made up my mind to the course which I afterwards pursued. Okay. Almost pretty much 2 minutes for you, lucky girl. Well, I called you a brat because you interrupted me in the middle of a reading. Continuing on. Wait, yawn. It was late when I reached home, and I went immediately to bed. My mind, however, was too much occupied to sleep, and I lay the whole night buried in meditation. Arising early in the morning and contriving again to escape the vigilance of my creditors, I repaired eagerly to the bookseller's stall and laid out what little ready money I possessed in the purchase of some volumes of mechanics and practical astronomy. Having arrived at home safely with this, I devoted every spare moment to their perusal, and soon made such proficiency in studies of this nature into the stories of this nature. Oh wait, what? Oh my god, again. I'll just restart. I devoted every spare moment of their perusal, and soon made such proficiency in studies of this nature as I thought sufficient for the execution of my plan. In the intervals of this period, I made every endeavor to conciliate the 3 creditors who had given me so much annoyance. In this, I finally succeeded, partly by selling enough of my household furniture to satisfy a moiety of their claim, and partly by a promise of paying the balance upon completion of a little project which I told them I had in view, and for assistance in which I solicited their services. By this means, for they were ignorant men, I found little difficulty in gaining them over to my purpose. Matters being thus arranged, I contrived, by the aid of my wife and with the greatest secrecy and caution, to dispose of what property I had remaining and to borrow in small sums under various pretenses and without paying any attention to my future means of repayment, no inconsiderable quantity of ready money. With the means thus accruing, I proceeded to procure at intervals cambric muslin, very fine in pieces of 12 yards each, twine, a lot of the varnish of caoutchouc, a large and deep basket of wicker work made to order, and several other articles necessary in the construction and equipment of a balloon of extraordinary dimensions. This I directed my wife to make up as soon as possible and gave her all requisite information as to welcome back. And gave her all the requisite information as to the particular method of proceeding. In the meantime, I worked up the twine into a network of sufficient dimensions, rigged it with a hoop and the necessary cords, bought a quadrant, a compass, a spyglass, a common barometer with some important modifications, and two astronomical instruments not so generally known. I then took opportunities of conveying by night to a retired situation east of Rotterdam 5 iron-bound casks to contain about 50 gallons each, and one of a larger size, 16 ware tubes, 3 inches in diameter, properly shaped, and 10 feet in length. A quantity of particular metallic substance or semi-metal, which I shall not name, and a dozen demi-johns of a very common acid. The gas to be formed from these latter materials is a gas never yet generated by any other person than myself, or at least never applied to any similar purposes. The secret I would make no difficulty in disclosing, The secret I would make no difficulty in disclosing, but that it of right belongs to a citizen of Nantes in France, by whom it was conditionally communicated to myself. The same individual submitted to me, without being at all aware of my intentions, a method of constructing balloons from the membrane of a certain animal, through which substance any escape of gas was nearly an impossibility. I found it, however, altogether too expensive, and was not sure upon the whole whether cambric muslin with a coating of gum caoutchouc was not equally as good. I mention this circumstance because I think it probable that hereafter the individual in question may attempt a balloon ascension with the novel gas and material I have spoken of, and I do not wish to deprive him of the honor of a very singular invention. On the spot which I intended each of the smaller casks to occupy respectively during the inflation of the balloon, I privately dug a hole 2 feet deep, the holes forming in this manner a circle 25 feet in diameter. In the center of the circle began the station designed for the large cask. I also dug a hole 3 feet in depth. In each of these 5 smaller holes, I deposited a canister containing 50 pounds, and in the larger one a keg holding 150 pounds of cannon powder. This man is crazy. This, the keg and canister, I connected in a proper manner with covered trains, and having laid into one of the canisters the end of about 4 feet of slow match, I covered up the hole and placed the cask over it, leaving the other end of the match protruding about an inch and barely visible beyond the cask. I then filled up the remaining holes and placed the barrels over them in their destined situation. Aww, you sent so many hearts. Thank you. It is so nice, darling. So cute. Continuing on. Besides the articles above enumerated, I conveyed to the depot and there secreted one of M. Grimm's improvements upon the apparatus for condensation of the atmospheric air. I found this machine, however, to require considerable alteration before it could be adapted to the purpose to which I intended making it applicable. But with severe labor and unremitting perseverance, I, at the length, met with entire success in all my preparations. My balloon wasn't completed. It would contain more than 40,000 cubic feet of gas, would take me up easily, I calculated, with all my implements, and if I managed rightly, with 170 feet and 75 pounds of ballast into the bargain, it had received 3 coats of varnish, and I found the cambric muslin to answer all the purposes of silk itself, quite as strong and a good deal less expensive. Okay. Let's see here. Let's take a little break. Because it's been an hour. Well, oh shit, no. I damaged the. Yeah, hello, the maiden mod dude. Thank you for the maiden mod. Bite me. I won't get mad. Okay. Let's see here. Oh, you wanna click? Of course. Oh, yeah, that reminds me, I have to move the book down. Like this. There you go. That's a click for you. Good girl. Alrighty. Very nice. I am going. Yeah, you did interrupt the reading. How nice. We're gonna have a little 5-minute break, and then we'll come back. So, get a drink, get some popcorn or something, get cozy, go to the bathroom, whatever you need, and we'll be back in a little bit, okay? I'm gonna be right back. Thank you for not interrupting me, T. See you in a little bit, okay? And we are back, I think. Hello, hello. I think the ads are all gone. Yes. So sad that today is such a slow day, though. I guess not many people are interested in reading today. Alas, I want to read, and so I am here. Let's continue with this. Let me move the thing again. Indeed. Even if no one is very interested in it at the moment, I will still read because I want to read. It's just sad because I wanted to read it to more people, but I guess today is not the best day for them. I mean, to be fair, it's a Wednesday, so maybe the Lovecraft stream will be a little better in that sense, who knows. In any case, I shall continue now. Probably for another hour or so. Let's see how far we get, because this is 30 pages and I've only read like, let's see here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pages. Yeah, exactly, you lucky girl. You're almost getting a personal reading experience just for you. Regalia fans are truly missing out. Well, you're not. Okay. So. Oh, I almost got a hiccup there. Oh, that was bad. Oh, thank you. That's so nice. I'm glad. If only everyone was just as dedicated as you. That'd be so nice. Here. Get a click for being such a good girl for me. Thank you, E.T. Alright. With that, I shall continue. With this. Okay. Everything being now ready, I exacted from my wife a note of secrecy in relation to all my actions from the day of my first visit to the bookseller's stall, and promising on my part to return as soon as circumstances would permit, I gave her what little money I had left and bade her farewell. Indeed, I had no fear on her account. She was what people call a notable woman, and could manage matters in the world without my assistance. I believe, to tell the truth, she's always looked upon me as an idle boy, a mere make-weight, good for nothing but building castles in the air, and was rather glad to get rid of me. It was a dark night when I bade her goodbye, and taking with me as aides de camp the 3 creditors who had given me so much trouble, we carried the balloon with the car and accoutrements by a roundabout way to the station where the other articles were deposited. We there found them all unmolested, and I proceeded immediately to business. Let's see here. You have to do it because you want to bother sir, but also you want to watch. Of course, yeah, no. I completely understand. Okay. It was the 1st of April. The night, as I said before, was dark. There was not a star to be seen, and a drizzling rain falling at intervals rendered us very uncomfortable. But my chief anxiety was concerning the balloon, which, in spite of the varnish which we with which it was defended, began to grow rather heavy with the moisture. The powder also was liable to damage. I therefore kept my 3 guns working with great diligence, pounding down ice around the central cask and stirring the acid in the others. They did not cease, however, importuning me with questions as to what I intended to do with all this apparatus, and expressed much dissatisfaction at the terrible labor I made them undergo. They could not perceive, so they said, what good was likely to result from their getting wet to the skin merely to take a part in such a horrible incantation. I began to get uneasy and worked away with all my might, for I verily believe the idiots supposed that I had entered into a compact with the devil, and that in short, what I was now doing was nothing better than it should be. I was therefore in great fear of their leaving me altogether. I contrived, however, to pacify them by promises of payment of all scores in full as soon as I could bring the present business to a termination. To these speeches they gave, of course, their own interpretation, fancying no doubt that at all events I should come into possession of vast quantities of ready money, and provided I paid them all I owed, and a trifle more in consideration of their services, I dare say they cared very little what became of either my soul or my carcass. Oh, this man is spiteful. In about 4 hours and a half, I found the balloon sufficiently inflated. I attached the car, therefore, and put all my implements in it, not forgetting the condensing apparatus, a copious supply of water, and a large quantity of provisions, such as pemmican, in which much nutriment is contained in comparatively little bulk. I also secured in the car a pair of pigeons and a cat. It was now nearly daybreak, and I thought it high time to take my departure. Dropping a lighted cigar on the ground, as if by accident, I took the opportunity, in stooping to pick it up, of igniting privately the piece of slow match, whose ends, as I said before, protruded a very little beyond the lower rim of one of the smaller casks. This maneuver was totally unperceived on the part of the 3 guns, and jumping into the car, I immediately cut the single cord which held me to the earth, and was pleased to find that I shot upward, carrying with all ease 175 pounds of leaden ballast, and able to have carried up as many more. So I'm guessing, is he trying to kill them? I wonder. Let's see here, what are you reading this time? Nice voice again? Of course you did. I'll give you the nice voice then. Okay, and now doing the ASMR voice. Wait, what? Oh, there we go. Scarcely, however, had I attained the height of 50 yards, when roaring and rumbling upon after me in the most horrible and tumultuous manner, came so dense a hurricane of fire and smoke and sulphur, and legs and arms and gravel and burning wood and blazing metal, that my very heart sunk with me, and I fell down in the bottom of the car, trembling with unmitigated terror. Indeed, I now perceived that I had entirely overdone the business, and that the main consequences of the shock were yet to be experienced. Accordingly, in less than a second, I felt all the blood in my body rushing to my temples, and immediately thereupon, a concussion which I shall never forget, burst abruptly through the night and seemed to rip the very firmament asunder. When I afterward had time for reflection, I did not fail to attribute the extreme violence of the explosion as regarded myself to its proper cause. My situation directly above it, and in the line of its greatest power, but at the time I thought only of preserving my life. The balloon at first collapsed, then furiously expanded, then wheeled round and round with horrible velocity, and finally, reeling and staggering like a drunken man, hurled me with great force over the rim of the car, and left me dangling at a terrific height, with my head downward and my face outwards, by a piece of slender cord about 3 feet in length, which hung accidentally through a crevice near the bottom of the wickerwork, and in which, as I fell, my left foot became most providentially entangled. Vitamins again. Now I'll continue my normal voice, of course. It is impossible, utterly impossible, to form any adequate idea of the horror of my situation. I gasped convulsively for breath. A shudder resembling a fit of the ague agitated every nerve and muscle of my frame. I felt my eyes starting from their sockets. A horrible nausea overwhelmed me, and at length I fainted away. How long I remained in this state is impossible to say. It must, however, have been no inconsiderable time, for when I partially recovered the sense of existence, I found day breaking the balloon at a prodigious height over a wilderness of ocean, and not a trace of land to be discovered far and wide within the limits of the vast horizon. My sensation, however, upon thus recovering, were by no means rife with agony, as might have been anticipated. Indeed, there was much of incipient madness in the calm survey which I began to take of my situation. I drew up to my eyes each of my hands, one after the other, and wondered what occurrence could have given rise to the swelling of the veins and the horrible blackness of the fingernails. I afterward carefully examined my head, shaking it repeatedly and feeling it with minute attention, until I succeeded in satisfying myself that it was not, as I had more than half suspected, larger than my balloon. Oh, did he change? His fingernails, his head. Oh, okay. Then, in a knowing manner, I felt in both my breeches pockets, and missing therefrom a set of table and a toothpick case, endeavored to account for their disappearance, and not being able to do so, felt inexpressibly chagrined. It now occurred to me that I suffered great uneasiness in the joint of my left ankle, and a dim consciousness of my situation began to glimmer through my mind. I used to get plagued? Okay. Good girl. There you go, there's your click. Let's see here. It now occurred to me that I suffered great uneasiness in the joint of my left ankle, and a dim consciousness of my situation began to glimmer through my mind. But strange to say, I was neither astonished nor horror-stricken. If I felt any emotion at all, it was a kind of chuckling satisfaction at the cleverness I was about to display in extricating myself from this dilemma. And I never for a moment looked upon my ultimate safety as a question susceptible of doubt. For a few minutes, I remained wrapped in the profoundest meditation. I have a distinct recollection. It's fun, yeah, because you're a little rat. Yes, you are. You like to annoy me. That's a bad thing to do. It is. That is a bad trait. Anyways, continuing on. I have a distinct recollection of frequently compressing my lips, putting my forefinger to the side of my nose, and marking use of other gesticulations and grimaces common to men who, at ease in their armchairs, meditate upon matters of intricacy or importance. Having, as I thought, sufficiently collected my ideas, I now, with great caution and deliberation, put my hands behind my back and unfastened a large iron buckle which belonged to the waistband of my inexpressibles. This buckle had 3 teeth which, being somewhat rusty, turned with great difficulty to the axis, on their axis. I brought them, however, after some trouble, at right angles to the body of the buckle, and was glad to find them remain firm in that position. Holding the instrument thus obtained within my teeth, I now proceeded to untie the knot of my cravat. I had to rest several times before I could accomplish this maneuver, but it was at length accomplished. To one end of the cravat, I then made fast the buckle, and the other end I tied, for greater security, tightly around my wrist. Drawing now my body upwards with a prodigious exertion of muscular force, I succeeded at the very first trial in throwing the buckle over the car and entangling it, as I had anticipated, in the circular rim of the wicker work. Okay, pause for me to drink some water and hydrate myself. There we go. My body was now inclined My body was now inclined towards the side of the car at an angle of about 45 degrees, but it must not be understood that I was therefore only 45 degrees below the perpendicular. So far from it, I still lay nearly level with the plane of the plane of the horizon, for the change of situation which I had acquired had forced the bottom of the car considerably outward from my position, which was, accordingly, one of the most imminent and deadly peril. It should be remembered, however, that when I fell in the first instance from the car, if I had fallen with my face turned toward the balloon, instead of turning outwardly from it, as it actually was, or if, in the second place, the cord by which I was suspended had changed. The cord in which I was suspended. I don't know why I'm so distracted. Sorry. Ah. Oh no. Oh no. Okay, it left, okay. Just a car with shit music was passing by and I was like, oh no, I hope it's not the neighbors. uh, Going on, continuing on. Or if, in the second place, the cord by which I was suspended had chanced to hang over the upper edge, instead of through the scrapies near the bottom of the car, I say it may be readily conceived that, in either of these supposed cases, I should have been unable to accomplish even as much as I had now accomplished, and the wonderful adventure of Hans Pfaall would have been utterly lost to posterity. I had therefore every reason to be grateful, although, in a point of fact, I was still too stupid to be anything at all, and home for perhaps a quarter of an hour in that extraordinary manner, without making the slightest farther exertion whatsoever, and in a singularly tranquil state of idiotic enjoyment. But this feeling did not fail to die rapidly away, and thereunto succeeded the horror and dismay and a chilling sense of utter helplessness and ruin. In fact, the blood so long accumulating in the vessel of my head and throat, at which had hitherto boiled upon my spirit with madness and delirium, had now begun to retire within their proper channels, and the distinctness which was thus added to my perception of the danger merely served to deprive me of the self-possession and courage to encounter it. But this weakness was, luckily for me, of not very long duration. In good time came to my rescue the spirit of despair, and with frantic cries and struggles I jerked my way bodily upwards, till at length, clutching with a vice-like grief the long-desired rim, I writhed my person over it and fell headlong and shuddering within the car. It was not until some time afterward that I recovered myself sufficiently to attend to the ordinary cares of the balloon. I then, however, examined it with attention, and found it, to my great relief, uninjured. Very nice. Okay, we're on page 10 of this one. Let's see. Oh. I wonder what happened. There we go. Indeed, I had so well secured them in their places that such an accident was entirely out of the question. Looking at my watch, I found it 6 o'clock. I was still rapidly ascending, and my barometer gave a present altitude of 3 3/4 miles. Immediately beneath me in the ocean lay a small black object slightly oblong in shape, seemingly about the size and in every way bearing a great resemblance to one of those childish toys called a domino. Bringing my telescope to bear upon it, I plainly discerned it to be a British 94 gunship, close-hauled and pitching heavily in the sea, with her head to the WSW Besides the ship, I saw nothing but the ocean and the sky, and the sun we had long arisen. It is now high time that I should explain to your excellencies the object of my perilous voyage. Your excellencies will bear in mind that distressed circumstances in Rotterdam had at length driven me to the resolution of committing suicide. It was not, however, that to life itself I had any positive disgust, but that I was harassed beyond endurance by the adventitious miseries attending my situation. In this state of mind, wishing to live, yet wearied with life, is the treatise at the stall of the bookseller opened a resource to my imagination. Let's see here. My hair is falling off my headphones and it's a little annoying. I then finally made up my mind. I determined to depart, yet live, to leave the world, yet continue to exist. In short, to drop enigmas, I resolved, let what would ensue, to force a passage, if I could, to the moon. Now, lest I should be supposed more of a madman than I actually am, I will detail as well as I'm able, without doubt difficult and incontestably full of danger, was not absolutely, to a bold spirit, beyond the confines of the possible. The moon's actual distance from the earth was the first thing to be attended to. Now, the mean or average interval between the centers of the two planets is 59.9643 of the Earth's equatorial radii, or only about 237,000 miles. I say the mean or average interval, but it must be borne in mind that the form of the moon's orbit begins an ellipse of eccentricity amounting to no less than 0.05484 of the major semi-axis of the ellipse itself, and the Earth's center being situated in its focus. If I could, in any manner, contrive to meet the moon, as it were, in its perigee, the above-mentioned distance would be materially diminished. But to say nothing at present of this possibility, it was very certain that, at all events, from the 237,000 miles I would have to deduct the radius of the Earth, say 4,000, and the radius of the moon, say 1,080, in all 5,080, leaving an actual interval to be traversed, under average circumstances, of 231,920 miles. Now this, I reflected, was no very extraordinary distance. Traveling on land has been repeatedly accomplished at the rate of 30 miles per hour, and indeed, a much greater speed may be anticipated. But even at this velocity, it would take me no more than 322 days to reach the surface of the moon. There were, however, many particulars inducing me to believe that my average rate of traveling might possibly very much exceed that of 30 miles per hour. And as these considerations did not fail to make a deep impression upon my mind, I will mention them more fully hereafter. The next point to be regarded was a matter of far greater importance. From indications afforded by the barometer, we find that in ascensions from the surface of the earth we have, at the height of 1,000 feet, left below us about 1/30th of the entire masses of atmospheric air. That at 10,600 we have ascended through nearly 1/3, and that at 18,000, which is not far from the elevation of Cotopaxi, we have surmounted one half the material, or all, at all events, one half of the ponderable body of air incumbent upon our globe. Nice voice again. Okay. 1 minute of a nice voice for you now. Let me get the timer. It is also calculated that an altitude not exceeding the 100th part of the Earth's diameter, that is, not exceeding 80 miles, the rarefaction would be so excessive that animal life could in no manner be sustained, and moreover, that the most delicate means we possess of ascertaining the presence of the atmosphere would be inadequate to assure us of its existence. But I did not fail to perceive that these latter calculations are founded altogether on our experimental knowledge of the properties of air and the mechanical laws regulating its dilation and compression in what may be called, comparatively speaking, the immediate vicinity of the Earth itself. And at the same time, it is taken for granted that animal life is and must be essentially incapable of modification at any given unattainable distance from the surface. There's your minute. Thank you very much for redeeming that. Now, all such reasoning and far from such all such reasoning and from such data must, of course, be simply analogical. The greatest height ever reached by man was that of 25,000 feet, attained in the aeronautic expedition of Messrs. Gay-Lussac and VOD. This is a moderate altitude even when compared with the 80 miles in question, and I could not help thinking that the subject admitted room for doubt and great latitude for speculation. But in point of fact, an ascension being made to any given altitude, the ponderable quantity of air surmounted in any further ascension is by no means in proportion to the additional height ascended, as may be plainly seen from what has been stated before, but in a ratio constantly decreasing. It is therefore evident that, ascend and high as we may, we cannot, literally speaking, arrive at a limit beyond which no atmosphere is to be found. It must exist, I argued, although it may exist in a state of infinite rarefaction. Okay, I think I'll finish reading this page and a little bit of the other, and then I'll leave it like that. And I'm gonna read a poem to finish. So, on the other hand, I was aware that arguments have not been wanting to prove the existence of a real and definite limit to the atmosphere, beyond which there is absolutely no air whatsoever, but a circumstance which has been left out of view by those who contend for such a limit seem to me, although no positive refutation of their creed, still a point worthy very serious investigation. On comparing the intervals between the successive arrivals of Encke's comet at its perihelion, after giving credits, in the most exact manner, for all the disturbances due to the attractions of the planets, it appears that the periods are gradually diminishing. That is to say, the major axis of the comet's ellipsis is growing shorter in a slow but perfectly regular decrease. Now this is precisely what ought to be the case, if we suppose a resistant experience from the comet from an extremely rare ethereal medium pervading the regions of its orbits. For it is evident that such a medium must, in retarding the comet's velocity, increase its centripetal by weakening its centrifugal force. In other words, the sun's attraction would be constantly attaining greater power, and the comet would be drawn nearer at every revolution. Indeed, there is no other way of accounting for the variation in question. But again, the real diameter of the same comet's nebulosity is observed to contract rapidly as it approaches the sun, and dilate with equal rapidity in its departure toward its aphelion. Was I not justifiable in supposing with M. Bals that this apparent condensation of volume has its origin in the compression of the same ethereal medium I have spoken of before, and which is only denser in proportion to its solar vicinity? The lenticular shape phenomenon, also called the zodiacal light, was a matter worthy of attention. This radiance, so apparent in the tropics, and which cannot be mistaken for any meteoric luster, extends from the horizon obliquely upwards and follows generally the direction of the sun's equator, Ooh, strawberry ice cream. That sounds pretty tasty. Give me some. Continuing on. Oh, the quarter. It appeared to me, evidently in the nature of a rare atmospheric extending from the sun outward, beyond the orbit of Venus at least, and I believe indefinitely farther. It's tasty, that's good. Yeah, I mean, they are ice cream after all. Of course they're called. Indeed, this medium I could not suppose confined to the path of the comet's ellipse, or to the immediate neighborhood of the sun. It was easy, on the contrary, to imagine it pervading the entire regions of our planetary system, condensed into what we call atmosphere at the planets themselves, and perhaps as some of them modified by considerations, so to speak, purely geological. Having adopted this view of the subject, I had little further hesitation. Granting that on my passage I should meet with atmosphere essentially the same as the surface of the earth, I conceived that by means of the very ingenious apparatus of surface of the earth. No, I conceived that by means of the very ingenious apparatus of Mr. Grimm, I should readily be enabled to condense it in its sufficient quantity for the purpose of respiration. This will remove the chief obstacle in a journey to the moon. I had indeed spent some money and great labor in adapting the apparatus to the object intended, and confidently looked forward to its successful application. If I could manage to complete the voyage within any reasonable period, this brings me back to the rate at which it might be possible to travel. It is true that balloons, in their first stage of their ascension from the earth, are known to rise with a velocity comparatively moderate. Now the power of elevation lies altogether in the superior lightness of the gas in the balloon compared with the atmospheric air, and at first sight it does not appear probable that, as the balloon acquires altitude and consequently arrives successively in an atmospheric strata of densities rapidly diminishing, I say, it does not appear at all reasonable that, in this its progress upward, the original velocity should be accelerated. On the other hand, I was not aware that in any recorded ascension a diminution was apparent in the absolute rate of ascent. Although such should have been the case, if on account of nothing else, on account of the escape of gas through the balloons, ill-constructed and vanished with no better material than the ordinary varnish. It seemed therefore that the effect of such escape was only sufficient to counterbalance the effect of some accelerating power. I now consider that, provided in my passage I found the medium I had imagined. Oh my fucking god. Wait, what? Oh my god, something scary almost happened, but it was a false alarm. Okay. It seemed therefore that the effect of such escape was only sufficient to counterbalance the effect of some accelerating power. No, nothing, don't worry, I just thought like someone from my real life found my TikTok and I was like, god damn it. I found the medium I had imagined. I now consider that, provided my passage, I found the medium I had imagined, and provided that it should prove to be actually and essentially what we denominate atmospheric air, it could make a comparatively little difference at what extreme state of rarefaction I should discover it, that is to say, in regard to my power of ascending, for the gas in the balloon would not only be itself subject to rarefaction partially similar, in proportion to the occurrence in which I could suffer an escape of so much as would be requisite to prevent explosion, but being what it was, would, at all events, continue specifically, lighter than any compound whatever of mere nitrogen and oxygen. In the meantime, the force of gravitation would be constantly diminishing in proportion to the squares of the distances, and thus, with a velocity prodigiously accelerating, I should at length arrive in those distant regions where the force of the Earth's attraction would be superseded by that of the Moon. In accordance with these ideas, I did not think it worthwhile to encumber myself with more provisions that would be sufficient for a period of 40 days. And that is where I'm gonna stop this section. I'm gonna put the marker here so I remember for next time. We are 12 pages out of about 30, so that's pretty good. Oh no. 12 pages out of 33, so we're about a third there. About a third way in. Very nice. In 2 hours, or an hour and something. And so, now I'm gonna read you the first poem, which is Leonore, page 682, okay. I shall read you that poem, and that's where we're gonna leave off for today. I'll leave you with a nice poem. Narrated by yours truly. Hopefully I won't fuck up too much. Poems of Manhood, it's called. Leonore. Oh, weird actually. Could have sworn there was another one. Let me see. Maybe I'm missing something. Story some point. Oh yeah, it's the Raven first, 650. That's why. I'm gonna wait until I reach a point before clicking you. You know, not gonna do much. Just annoy me a little. There we go. Poems of later life. The Raven. That's what we're gonna read right now. And so it goes like this. The Raven. Once upon a midnight dreary, oh, stupid car. I'm not mean, I'm so nice. Come on, you're gonna say that I'm not nice? You're mean yourself if you say I'm not nice. Anyways, The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of some one gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door. Only this, and nothing more. Distinctly I remember, it was the bleak December, and each separate dying ember rolled disgust upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my book's surcease of sorrow for the lost Leonore. For the rare a radiant maiden whom the angels name Leonore, nameless here forevermore. And the silken sad uncertain rustling of each purple curtain filled me with fantastic terrors never felt before. So that now, to still the beating of my heart, I stood repeating, "'Tis some visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door, some late visitor entreating entrance at my chamber door. This is it, and nothing more." Presently my soul grew stronger, hesitating then no longer. "Sir," said I, "or Madame, truly your forgiveness I implore, but the fact is I was napping, and so gently you came rapping, and so faintly you came tapping at my chamber door, that I scarce was sure I heard you, Here, I opened the wine door, darkness there, and nothing more. Deep into the darkness peering, long I stood there wondering, fearing, doubting, dreaming dreams no mortal ever dared to dream before. But the silence was unbroken, and the darkness gave no token, and the only word there spoke was the whispered word, Leonor. This I whispered, and an echo murmured back the word Leonor. Merely this, and nothing more. Back into the chamber turning, all my soul within me burning, soon I heard again a tapping, somewhat louder than before. Surely, said I, surely that is something at my window lattice. Let me see then what threat is, and this mystery explore. Let my heart beat still a moment and this mystery explore. 'Tis the window and nothing more. Open here I flung the shutter, when with many a flirt a flutter, in there stepped a stately raven of the saintly days of yore. Not the least obeisance made he, not an instant stopped or stayed he, but with mien of lord and lady. But with mien of lord or lady, perched above my chamber door, perched upon a bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door, perched and sat, and nothing more. Also, thank you for the click, you brat. Such a good girl. Then this ebony bird beguiling my sad fancy into smiling, by the grave and stern decorum of the continents it wore. Though thy crest be shorn and shaven, thou, I said, art sure not craven, ghastly grim and ancient raven wandering from the nightly shore. Tell me what their lordly name is on the night's Plutonian shore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Much I marvelled this ungainly fowl, to hear this curse so plainly, though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore, for we cannot help agreeing that though its answer little meaning, little relevancy bore, for we cannot help agreeing that no living human being ever yet was blessed with seeing bird above his chamber door, bird or beast upon the sculpture bust above his chamber door, which such name as nevermore. But the raven, sitting lonely on the placid bust, spoke only that one word, as if his soul in that one word he did outpour. Nothing farther than he uttered, not a feather than he fluttered, till I scarcely more than muttered, other friends have flown before, on the morrow he will leave me, as my hopes have flown before. Then the bird said, nevermore. Startled at the stillness broken by reply so aptly spoken, doubtless, said I, what it others it is only. Doubtless, said I, what it others is its only stock and store caught from some unhappy master, whom unmerciful disaster followed fast and followed faster till his own one burden bore, till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden till the dirges of his hope that melancholy burden bore, of never, nevermore. But the raven still beguiling all my sad soul into smiling, straight I wheeled a cushioned seat in front of the bird, and buzzed and door. Then upon the velvet sinking, I betook myself to linking fancy unto fancy, thinking what this ominous bird of yore, what this grim, ungainly, ghastly, gaunt and ominous bird of yore meant in croaking nevermore. This I sat engaged in guessing, but no syllable expressing to the fowl whose fiery eyes now burned into my bosom's core. This and more I sat divining, with my head at ease reclining on the cushion's velvet lining that the lamplight gloated o'er, but whose velvet violet lining with the limelight gloating o'er, she shall press Ah, nevermore. Then, methought, the air grew denser, perfume from an unseen censer swung by angels whose faint foot falls tinkled on the tufted floor. Wretch! I cried, thy God had lent thee, by these angels he had sent thee, respite, respite, a nepenthe from thy memories of Leonore. Quaff, oh quaff this kind nepenthe, and forget this lost Leonore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, think of evil. Prophet still, if bird or devil. Whether tempter sent, or whether tempest tossed thee here ashore. Desolate yet all undaunted, on this desert land enchanted, on this home by horror haunted. Tell me truly, I implore, is there balm in Gilead? Tell me, I implore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Prophet, said I, think of evil, prophet still, if bird or devil, by that heaven that bends above us, by that God we both adore. Tell this soul with sorrow laden if we did the Tell this soul with sorrow laden if we did the distant Aden, it shall clasp a sainted maiden whom the angels name Leonore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Leonore. Clasp a rare and radiant maiden whom the angels name Leonore. Quoth the raven, nevermore. Be that word or sign of parting, bird or fiend, I shrieked upstarting, get thee back into the tempest and the night's Plutonian shore. Leave no black plume as a token of that lie thy soul had spoken. Leave my loneliness unbroken, quit the bust above my door. Take that beak from out my heart, and take that form from off my door. Quoth the raven, nevermore. And the raven, never fleeting, still is sitting on the pallid bust of Pallas, just above my chamber door. And his eyes have all the seeming of a demon's that is dreaming, and the lamplight o'er him streaming throws his shadow on the floor, and my soul from out that shadow that lies floating on the floor shall be lifted nevermore. The end. Like I said, that was The Raven by Edgar Allan Poe. I hope you enjoy my dramatic intonation of it. I read poetry. Now we're gonna start an ad break and then we're gonna wrap this up. That was so fun, just reading, having lots of fun, being an absolutely massive degenerate. You know how it be. Alrighty, I will be back in just a little bit. Let's take a short break. Well, we're about to end, but I wanna talk a little more, just chilling. Okay, BRB. Alright, I am back. Hello, hello. Very well. Now that I think about it, I probably should have tagged this as ASMR. But yeah, hello, hello. Now it's time to wrap this up, but before that, I'm just gonna keep talking in the nice voice permanently until I end the stream. Just because I'm nice like that. Too bad we didn't get too many people joining today. Let's see here. Ooh, nice. Let's see here. Time to get ready. I wonder. Let's see here. Saturday. Yeah, I'm gonna change. Yeah, true. All you think about is being an annoying little brother. Can you not? Shaking my head. Are you sure about that? Okay. Wow, it's 8:31 already. Wait, I thought that's. Oh yeah, I had to stop stream for like 20 minutes at first because of the internet issue. Okay, that makes sense. So yeah, I'm pretty much 2 hours in. That's good. That's good. I'm not mean, I'm really nice and kind. Yes, I am. Very well. I think that'll do it for today. I can't wait for a Saturday to go and Lovecraft. That'd be real cool. I'll see how I'll tackle that one because I did not expect for each story to be so long, although I should have probably. And it's not that long, but just for reading on stream. I kind of wanted to get through some But yeah, some stories will be like longer than others, so I don't particularly mind too much. Anyway, that's been that has been it for now. Thank you very, very much for watching, my dear Spawn. Mwah. Good Spawn. I'll be seeing you on Friday for Limbus Company. Good night.